In the state of Michigan, the home of unions, the legislature, both the House and the Senate, passed a right-to-work law in the state where we never thought that that could happen. The Republican governor of the state has promised to sign it into law, and for the first time ever, the state of Michigan will be a right-to-work state. We have Bill Baldwin here. Bill, tell us what that means for starters, so people understand what that means when you become a right-to-work state.
When you become a right-to-work state, you have the right to have a contract with your union that doesn't force all workers to join the union and pay dues to the union.
They can still join the union, but they can actually do so without even having to pay in monthly.
Well, this is the subtle point. They can, whether they're within the union or not in the union, they get the benefits of the union membership.
Right.
But they're not paying for it. Now, I'm going to astonish you, Rick, since I usually am very supportive of things that help business climates, and you aren't. I'm going to astonish you by saying I oppose right-to-work legislation. Because
it's astonishing.
It is astonishing, and here's why. I see it as freeloading. So we have a Democratic election at Ford Motor Company. 51% of the workers want to join the UAW. Right. I'm one of the 49. Why should I get a free ride when you get my wages up?
Well,
of course,
yeah, obviously I
agree with me,
that.
Right?
I completely agree with that. But you know, you have to ask the question, why are these Republican legislatures so anxious to pass right-to-work laws? They like to argue that it helps create employment in the state because more people come there with their businesses because it's cheaper to operate. And yet, when you look at the data, that isn't really necessarily true, is it?
Well, it may or may not be. Now, here is a footnote, a little proviso, a caveat, which will make you not like my position so much. I go for supporting unions on the right-to-work laws. And I also go for supporting unions in opposing those scab plants like Boeing is setting up by moving across the country.
So you support unions in stopping that from happening?
Oh, yes. I'm not in favor of what Boeing is doing, but with one proviso. My laws work only if they go with another law which says that unions have to be limited to one company at a time. Now think about that. So Ford votes to join a union, and they have all kinds of silly work rules, or they have post-retirement health benefits that may bankrupt the company. Right. And across the street, there's a GM plant, and the GM workers have to be in a different union. UAW Ford, UAW GM, and the two UAWs can't talk to each other. Well, that's an antitrust provision. Now, what does this do, Rick? Do you think that would be good or bad?
If we took your approach, which was create a union in every single working environment to deal with, that relationship between management and worker, yeah, you may get some deals, but you'd have absolutely no power within the concept of unionism to support candidates who you might think is appropriate. In fact, would your law also ban them from forming together to support political candidates?
Well, there's no restrictions in my world on political advocacy. That's just a First Amendment right. But let me tell you why your view of union power wrecks unions. Now, Rick, how long did you live in Detroit?
I lived in Detroit about, 5-6 years.
Okay. You were there to see that city being wrecked by the UAW when the UAW put in stupid work rules or put in unaffordable health care benefits. They had no feedback from the market because the UAW owned the whole car market until one little thing happened. One day, the UAW woke up and discovered that Toyota had taken away all of their jobs. Why did that happen? Because the union was monopolistic.
I don't agree.
There wasn't a competition between the Ford union and the GM union.
Toyota didn't take away those jobs because of the unions. Toyota took away those jobs because they were building a better car. And it wasn't the work of the union workers going into the car, it was the design and the quality of the car manufacturers wanted to build. I don't know how you can dispute that. And I'll go a little bit further afield because we saw it in the past few weeks over at Hostess. There's always this tendency that when things go wrong, let's blame the union. Were it the unions that destroyed Detroit? Absolutely not. Just as it wasn't the unions who destroyed Hostess. What destroyed Hostess is nobody eats Twinkies anymore. Nobody buys this for their kids anymore. So now let's take it back to Detroit. Agree with you that it got out of control in terms of the cost per hour of a union worker. But what we see happening now with turning it into a right-to-work state, this is a very cynical effort to destroy the power of unions in this country. Is it a coincidence that it's a Republican House and a Republican Senate that's creating a bill that was rammed through in I'm hearing record time in the state, and it's going to be signed by a Republican governor? And you know what else is going to happen in 2 years? It's no longer going to be a Republican House and a Republican Senate. And by the way, making it worse, the people who pushed this through bill, many of them lost their seat. They're not even going to be there in January. So my prediction is this bill will not, this law will not last more than a couple of years.